Hello everyone, and welcome to the Pandas Data Visualization Exercise Solutions lecture. In this lecture, we're going to go over the solutions for the Pandas Data Visualization exercise questions. Let's go ahead and jump to Jupyter Notebook to get started. Alright, here I am at the notebook. I'm going to go ahead and run the first few cells of code to read the D3 CSV file, set up all the imports correctly, and check out the head. Alright, next thing I wanted to do was to recreate a scatter plot of B versus A. So just those two columns. Let's go ahead and do that by saying d3.plot.scatter, and then I'm going to go ahead and specify that I want on my x-axis the A column, and on my y-axis I want the B column. Let's just see what that looks like. And whoops, this should be df3. There we go. So I'm getting a similar plot, except something to note was see if you can figure out how to stretch it in a similar fashion to this plot. And as we went over in the lecture, you can actually just pass in fig size directly into this argument as a parameter, and we can stretch it out as so. And then another thing to note here is that the size of these points is a little bigger, so you can actually specify that, as we saw in the lecture, either by another column or just by passing in S for size. And I'm going to specify the size to be 50. Here we have the points are a little larger, and for the color, it was C. We saw in the lecture how we can specify color by another column, but you can also just pass in a string, as you could for matplotlib. And here now we have a recreation of that plot, exactly. Okay, the main thing I wanted you to get out of this particular question was just this step of plot.scatter, A versus B, so X and Y. Don't worry too much if you weren't able to get the sizing or the coloring. Fig size, hopefully you're able to get that. Okay, moving on. Now we want to create a histogram of the A column. This is actually quite simple. You just call the column itself and then say either hist to see the histogram, or you can also say plot.hist, and that'll return the same histogram. And this is the default number of bins, but you can also pass in an argument if you wanted more bins. Alright, the next issue was that these plots are okay, but they don't look very polished. And the instructions said use style sheets to set the style to ggplot and redo the histogram from above, and also figure out how to add more bins to it. This is a topic that we actually didn't cover in the video lecture, but it is covered in the notebook. So hopefully you had either two paths. One, you rechecked the notebook to figure out what style sheets was referring to, or you Google searched matplotlib style sheets. If not, you could have also posted to the Q&A forum to get to what I was referencing there. If you go ahead and check out the notebook lecture for Pandas built-in data visualization, there's a style sheets section. And this is kind of just to get you in the mood of trying to discover aspects on your own. Here you can see that matplotlib has a style sheets, and there's a little reference link there. And if you Google search this, you probably would have also gone to this page. And this is the gallery, and there's a style sheets section in the gallery. And the basic premise or idea is that you can use plt.style.use, pass in a string of a style, and it will automatically change the aesthetics to a particular style. And that looks like this. You just say plt.style.use ggplot. So we can go ahead and just copy this line of code, come over here and paste it. And now, since this has been run, you'll notice that if we go ahead and copy and paste the exact line of code here and paste it in here, we get a much better looking plot. And you'll also notice that here this red is a little more see-through, so you can also pass in an alpha to make it a little more transparent. And here you can begin to start matching these histograms together. Hopefully that wasn't too challenging for you, but there is that aspect of kind of discovering things on your own, which is probably the most important part of learning data science and learning programming. The ability to search for an answer on your own without being given the full context of information. However, you can always feel free to post on the Q&A forums if anything's ever confusing to you. Alright, let's go ahead and move on to the box plots. We wanted to create a box plot comparing the A and B columns. If we take a look at whoops, let me run that. If we take a look at just the data frame itself, notice we have A, B, C, and D columns. So I don't want to get a box plot of all the columns, I just want A and B. So I'm actually just going to grab those columns by passing in a list of those column names. A and B, and then I can call plot.box. Now I'll create a box plot that looks the same as this one. Okay, next I wanted to create a KD plot of the D column. Again, that's actually pretty straightforward. You just pass in the D column, say plot, and then say KDE. And that'll return this plot. And then finally we have over here, figure out how to increase the line width and make the line style dash. And note, you would usually not dash a KD plot line. Alright, so the way you can do this is actually just take this same plot, KDE, or density, and then you can go ahead and pass in arguments from matplotlib, such as line style and line width. And here we get the same plot. And you can also do this with density if you wanted to. That's the same command. Then we wanted to create an area plot of all the columns for just the rows up to 30. And then it said hint use ix. So hopefully you can discover by calling ix. So d3.ix. You can see that this is a property, and it's primarily a label location based indexer with integer position fallback. And so what you can do is actually just use this for slicing. And again, it's kind of a thing I want you to discover as you go along on your own. So you can pass in 0 through 30 here, and this will return just the first 30 rows, or whatever slicing notation you wanted. And then off of that, you can call plot area, and you get a plot that looks like this. And if you wanted it to look like the plot below, you could actually put in an alpha value there. All right, there was a bonus challenge, and note you may find this really hard. Reference the solutions if you can't figure it out. But notice how up here, the legend was actually overlapping some of the actual diagram. And you usually wouldn't want that. And I wanted you to figure out how you can display the legend outside of the plot as shown below, over here. And again, back on that theme of trying to discover things on your own, I wanted for you to try Google searching for a good Stack Overflow link. And if you couldn't find it on your own, there was a link to a Stack Overflow question. So if we take a look at this link on Stack Overflow, someone's asking how to put the legend outside the plot with pandas. And if we kind of scroll over here and take a look at this, you'll notice that someone actually answered this question correctly, and they said right here, the plt.legend, location center left, and then this bb box to anchor. That's the key here. And you can actually just copy this code and paste it here, and then take the other code of this area plot and paste it here. And then what we want to do is create a figure for these to be all called. And then we'll say plt.show, and this will create a figure with the legend outside. This would also work if you actually removed the first line and the last line in Jupyter Notebook. In other situations, such as other IDE editors, you may have to actually define the figure and show the figure, but since we're just using Jupyter Notebook, we can actually just run these two lines, and it will remove the legend and place it on the outside. So the basic idea here is hopefully you can discover on your own how to grab these sort of lines of code and put them into your own code. And that's actually a very common thing to do. You check out Stack Overflow, see what lines of code are relevant to you, and then fit them into your own work. Okay, that's it. Great job, everyone. And I will see you at the next lecture. Feel free to post to the Q&A forums if anything was confusing here for you.